Week 3 of Good to Great. Last week and this week, we're learning from the life and legacy of a man by the name of Caleb. Everyone say Caleb. Yeah, he's one of the heroes of our faith. This man pushed through the good to occupy the great. He made the conscious choice to resist the status quo. He refused to settle, but instead seized his divine inheritance, the great land God promised. If you have a Bible, you can open up to Joshua chapter 14. As you're turning there, let me show you a little map that I and Daniel Larson drew to help give you context. More Daniel than me. I drew it on a napkin, then he made it look cool. So this is the map right here. As you're turning to Joshua 14, I'm about to read you some words that Caleb said, but this little map can give you the context within 30 seconds. Real quick, God's people, the Israelites, they were no longer in Egypt, okay? They're no longer in Egypt. God used Moses to lead them out, and then they entered the wilderness. And there was this moment, amazing moment, where they found themselves at Kadesh. Everyone say Kadesh. All right, very comfortable place, a well-watered oasis in the middle of the desert. And Moses sent out 12 spies, where? Into the promised land, and they stepped in the promised land. They looked at it, they tasted it, it was amazing. They came back to Kadesh. They said, oh my goodness, Moses, it's true, it's amazing, but there's also really big people there. And this is when their hearts melted, not in faith, but in fear. They were terrified. And so this thing happened where they then began to walk around in the wilderness for 40 years. And then finally, under the leadership of Joshua and then his counterpart Caleb, they begin to take the long way up into the what? The promised land, not promised, but promised land. It was a land God had promised. It was a promised land. But also within the promised land, this would be, and this isn't to scale, don't email me, all right? This is the blue region. There was this part up here called the hill country. The hill country. And that piece of the promised land was seared on the heart of Caleb. He never forgot about it. It occupied his imagination. He longed and he dreamed of the day when he'd be back with his 2 feet planted on the promised land. Verse 10, if you're opened up to Joshua 14, this is what Caleb says. So here I am, Caleb says, 21 years old. No, here I am today, how old? 85 years old. All right, and no offense if you're 85 years old, but you'd agree that's old. That is old, okay? 85 years old. But he says, I am still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out. I'm just as vigorous to go out and battle now as I was then. And listen to this request. He says to Joshua, now give me the hill country. Give me the hill country. I know he said it like that. It wasn't like, well, if you give him the hill country. No, I'm convinced. He's like, give me the hill country. Give me the hill country. Give me the hill country that the Lord promised me that day. You yourself heard then that the Anakites, big people, strong people, terrifying people, were there and their cities were large and fortified. But the Lord helping me, this would be an act of God's power. The Lord helping me, he wasn't outsourcing this, no, I will step into this. I will drive them out just as he said. Then Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and gave him Hebron. Everyone say Hebron. As his inheritance. It was the hill country. So Hebron has belonged to Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, ever since. Why? Because he followed the Lord, the God of Israel, wholeheartedly. One of my favorite stories in all of the Bible. Caleb was a lot of things, but one thing he certainly was that Caleb was a hill taker. He was a hill taker. Caleb was not a hill retreater. Caleb was a hill taker. If you start to study hill takers of history, you'll see a constant thread that runs throughout all of them. Doesn't matter what hill taker of history that it is, you will see this consistent thread running through all of them. It could be William Wilberforce, it could be Martin Luther, Amy Carmichael, or Mother Teresa. In this case, Caleb, son of Jephunneh. Every hill taker of history, you will find wholehearted devotion. Not half-hearted devotion, not kind of in, all in. Wholehearted devotion. Look at verse 14. Verse 14, let me read it to you again. He, Caleb, followed the Lord, the God of Israel, say it with me, wholeheartedly. As you're studying the Bible, you look for reoccurring words. This is one of the ways we study to really understand what's going on. This is the reoccurring descriptor of Caleb 6 times it is used in the Bible to describe this hill taker, wholehearted. Wholehearted. He was all in, wholehearted. At age 85, for the record, he was a hill taker. He said, give me the hill country that God had promised. The more you study this story, you will see at the age of 85, if anyone had the right to coast, it was Caleb. If anyone could have said in that moment, my best days are behind me, because there were actually 7 years before this moment that were amazing. He could have said that, but no, with conviction, Caleb said, the best is yet to come. Or in the words of my dad, who leads Mission Legacy, if you're not dead, you're not done, right? He was a hill taker. And for the past 3 weeks, I've been living in this story. I feel like Caleb and I know each other quite well. I have been studying his life. I've been looking at this request of the hill country, and it continues to bring me to the question of how. How at the age of 85 did he ask for the hill country? How? How at the age of 85 did he have enough gas in the tank? How did he care enough to keep going? Simply put, the question I want us to explore today is this: how did Caleb take the hill? He wasn't over the hill, he owned the hill. How did Caleb take the hill? Well, the answer to that is in two parts. There's always one part that God does, and that was his power. He said, with the Lord's help. That's really important. Don't miss that. Don't just quickly move beyond that. That's always involved. God's power, if you're going to take hills for his kingdom and for his glory, God's power is like always got to be there, okay? So God's power. But what I want us to look at is the role that Caleb played in this equation, because he played a role in this equation. Two things specifically on how Caleb took the hill. The first one is hill-taking perspective. Hill-taking perspective. If you're following along in the notes today, that is the first fill in the blank. Say this with me. Hill-taking perspective. Hill-taking perspective. Perspective. What's perspective? It's someone's view on life. It's their point of view. And he had quite a perspective. The illustration or word picture when I think of Caleb's hill-taking perspective, it really is something that I spend a lot of time in. I think you do as well as suburbanites. The thing that we're in that advances us the most is an automobile. I think we've all heard of, we've heard of automobiles, right? Making sure we're together. And I have this picture here. This is a picture of a car. And there's someone driving the car. And there's two really important things within this picture. When it comes to Caleb's hill-taking perspective, the first is this. He had a windshield kind of perspective. He had a windshield kind of perspective. Every hill-taker of history has the same perspective. They look forward. They look ahead. When Caleb said, give me the hill country, this is a windshield declaration. He was believing for something in the future. So important. If you're taking notes, write this down. Caleb learned from the past, but he didn't live in the past. Some of you came to church just for that statement. Right? This is like all you need. You can leave right now if you'd like to. Here it is. Caleb learned from the past, and we better learn from our past. You got to know your story. You got to know where you came from. Caleb learned from the past, but he didn't what? He didn't live in the past. He didn't live in the past. He had a windshield perspective. The Apostle Paul writes this in Philippians 3:13. But one thing I do, Paul writes, one thing I do. He was a hill taker for the record. One thing I do, not one thing I think of, not one thing I consider, one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead. Last Sunday, half of you were here, and because it was minus 50. And it's okay, I'm not mad at you, I get it. I shared with you guys 5 marks of a movement of Jesus, and I'm going to share those with you again today. It's something that's been seared on not just my heart, but a lot of our hearts, and I'm going to share those with you here in a little bit. Those are very much windshield declarations of faith that we're believing God for. We don't know, it's not like our strategic plan. We're not going to manufacture those things, but we're believing in faith for those 5 marks of a movement of Jesus. Caleb, his perspective, this is so important. If you want to be a hill taker, and some of you walked in with so much apathy, you are asleep at the wheel of your one and only life. I just want you to know you have to have a windshield perspective. You have to have a posture that is saying, I'm looking ahead, I'm looking forward. We are not there yet. No, we are advancing. This is what Caleb had. He had that perspective, but he also had another perspective, and it's really important. It's actually in the same picture. What else is really, really clear that you need in this picture? It's another piece of glass. It's not the windshield, but it is the what? It's a rearview mirror. If you want to advance down the road that you're gonna drive when we're done here in a little bit, you actually need both of these. You need to look, and please do this. You actually need to look through the windshield. Please do this. Otherwise, you're a threat to society. But do you remember in driver's ed, they taught you, and they taught me every 5 to 8 seconds, what do you look at? You actually look at the rear of your mirror. Why is this so important? If you and I do not have both of these in play with our perspective, we will not take hills. Specifically, what I'm getting at here is we have to have foresight, but also hindsight. And Caleb had both. He kept in view both the promise, but also his past. Romans 12:1, I think, would have been one of Caleb's favorite verses if the New Testament would have been around in his day. Listen to these words. Paul writes, therefore, I urge you. He's like shaking us. I urge you, listen, brothers and sisters, in view, right? In view of God's what? In view of God's mercy. Offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is what Caleb did. His life was on the altar, a living sacrifice. But it's so important to keep in view the mercy of God. When I say rear view mirror, what I don't mean is for you to constantly look back at all of your blunders and all of your failures and all the stupid things that you did and all the stupid things that I did. That's not what I'm talking about. That's what the enemy would want you to do. He would actually want you to turn around and look back at all those things. But if you ever do glance and you say, God, but what about those things? God's saying, I actually don't remember those things. I've actually separated your sin as far as the east is from the west. And so we don't look at the rearview mirror to remember the dumb things that we did. No, we look back to remember the life-altering, eternity-altering thing that Jesus did. When we look at the rearview mirror, we look back and we see the cross of Jesus Christ. We look back and we see the hill that you and I could never take, a hill called Calvary. We look back in the rearview mirror and we see Jesus Christ stretched out for you and for me. We remember the mercy. We look and we remember what it first felt like to feel forgiven. If some of you don't have fuel to keep moving forward, it's because you've forgotten. You've forgotten. Occupying churches all around the world right now are men and women who do not care about the kingdom of God advancing. They don't. They really don't. They can't name one non-Christian friend in their life. They can't remember the last time they wept over the lost. Why is that? There's a lot of reasons, but one reason is because they do not have a rearview mirror in their life. They've made the decision to forget what it felt like to be forgiven. They can't remember the last time that they were begging God to move in a powerful way to reach their friends or family members. In Mission Church, we just have to be the kind of church that is both a windshield perspective church, but also a rearview mirror remembering the cross of Christ. That's why when our friends get baptized, I've known Joe, I went to high school with Joe Book, and he and I both have dirt on each other, and so we don't tell anyone. But Joe, you remember this. When our church opened our first account, we walked into one bank, and it just didn't feel right, and the treasury at the time on our board said, do you know of any other bank? I'm like, yeah, what about Itasca Bank? We drove down to Itasca Bank, and we had $20 to open our church account. 10 of it was mine. So I'm like 50% shareholder is what I'm saying. And we had 2 10s, and we walked into Itasca Bank, and the first person I saw was you, Joe. And you gave me a hug, and we started to catch up. And from that moment, I started praying for Joe, started inviting Joe, and he came to the middle school. And to watch your journey and your wife and your sweet kids, it just melts my heart. And family members are here and colleagues are here to celebrate you, Joe, and you're just getting started. You're a windshield kind of man, but never forget the rearview mirror. And it's like making me shake telling this story because we just have to be this kind of church, guys. We have to have the perspective that Caleb had. It says this in verse 14. So Hebron has belonged to Caleb, son of, this is a fun one, Jephunneh. Everyone say Jephunneh. I mean, you think your life is hard. Imagine, there's Caleb, son of Jephunneh. He's like, would you please just, everyone knows. Just stop saying his name. Son of Jephunneh. The Israelite. And it doesn't say that? No, what does it say? The what? The Kenizzite. It means they're from Keeneyville. Kenizzite. You got to look it up. It's true. It's not true. The Kenizzite. All right, so I can't spend much time on this. I got to keep going. I'm already behind. You do this in your own study, but this unlocked the text to me. Here's what this means. Caleb's family were proselytes. Big word means those that chose, conscious choice, to convert, to make the decision to come into the family of God. Now, it's not written in the Bible, but I believe this is a window into his why. He wasn't born into this. So important. He had this perspective, windshield, rearview mirror, windshield looking forward in faith, rearview mirror looking back in gratitude at God's mercy. Second thing, hill-taking preparation. I've been excited to preach this for 3 weeks, this part right here. So join me in some excitement. Hill-taking preparation. I know when you hear about preparing, you get really excited. Hill-taking preparation, this is so important. Why? It's so important. If you want to take the hill with the power of God, for the glory of God, that means you have to get ready right now. Too many Christians have tried to take hills that God have called them to, but they're just simply not ready for them. They're not prepared. And so they die on the hill saying Christianity is way too hard. God set me up to fail. We have to get ready. If you wait to prepare for the hill, once you're at the hill, you've waited too long. Caleb was more than passionate. Don't think for a second he was just passionate. He was also prepared. He was prepared. He was ready. He's coming off of 7 years of intense battle. 7 years of intense battle. This is why he says in verse 11, I am still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out, not because I've been sitting on the couch. No, I've been preparing for this. I'm just as vigorous to go out to battle now as I was then. Write this down. Preparation land always precedes the promised land. Preparation land. Getting ready. Being trained up in godliness right now always precedes the promised land. Anytime there's a teaching series on good to great or something that's just like gets us fired up, at least some of us get fired up at this, we oftentimes make the wrong application. You get in your car and you say, I gotta try harder. It's up to me. Not trying hard enough. What's my problem? You start, like getting mad and blaming your wife. Like, I gotta try harder. That is not the application. I think the application is this. I want you to train harder. I want you to train harder. Training harder is greater than trying harder. This is one of the most freeing spiritual formation principles that I've ever come across, and I thank Pastor John Ortberg for this. A book I read every year is The Life You've Always Wanted, and it's top 5. I read it every year. And this is, when I read this quote a number of years ago, it unlocked something. It has freed me, but it's also focused me. He says there's an immense difference between training to do something and trying to do something. And again, churches are filled with way too many Christians that are just trying so hard instead of training wisely. We need to train, we need to train, we need to train. Caleb was ready for the hill because he had the tools. He was ready. For 7 years, he'd been training. I love the Navy SEAL quote, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your training. I have a little bit of an unhealthy fascination with Navy SEALs, so bear with me, but that is such a great quote, right? How often do you get to the hill? I don't know what the hill is, but something in your heart just beats and breaks for that hill, and you've bought into the myth that like you'll rise to the occasion, but you don't. Not really steep ones. No, you fall to the level of your training. So this is why we got to train right now. I don't know what hills are in your future. I really don't. But what I know is right now is the time for you to get prepared. Right now is the time for you to get trained up. Passion alone will not get you up that hill. God's power plus your preparation, I think will. You got to get ready right now. When it comes to your marriage, a lot of us are married in the room. There are hills on the horizon. There's some hills that you want to take with your spouse. You got to get ready today. When it comes to what you're leading, a lot of us are leading a lot of different things. There are hills on the horizon of your leadership. You got to get ready today. You got to get trained up. You got to get prepared. When it comes to this church, there's hills on our horizon. I shared about these 5 marks of a movement of Jesus in the 10 in our lifetime, and I shared those with you with trepidation because they're so big. They scare me. Monday, I felt a lot of different things. I was like, man, I don't know if I should have shared all those. But I want to share these again with you. Just know that these are God-sized. Know that these cannot be manufactured. Know that these aren't for the name of Mission Church. This is to experience a movement of Jesus, not Mission, not John, not Tommy, not Jess, I could just keep going through. No, this is to experience a movement of Jesus in the 10, in our lifetime. Well, what will that look like? And here's just what I believe. I believe that will look like 1,000 people baptized annually. I believe that. That's revival stuff. We're going to have to I don't know how we're going to do it. That's a problem I want to figure out. 1,000 people baptized annually, that's a movement of Jesus. Do you want that hill? 4 of you do. 1,000 churches resourced, equipped, and sent. I want to be part of a church that sends leaders all around the world. How are we going to do that? I have no idea. John, what's your plan? Don't have one. I'm going to pray. That's it. For now. He'll reveal more. Can you imagine? No matter where you travel in the world, there'd be a church that somehow we were a part of. It's not named Mission, but you could be a part of it. 1,000 people attending the Alpha Course annually. That's never happened in America. Really, there's never been anything over 400 in America. Just know, part of that number is English speaking. Part. We're about to start Alpha in Spanish here in a week. And it's exciting. We want Alpha in Polish soon. Can you imagine? Right now, there's 300 people registered for the Alpha course. Right, 300. That's unheard of, truly. But I have seen with my own eyes 1,000 people at an Alpha course in London at Holy Trinity Brompton. That's why I went there in October. I needed to see it. Yeah. 1,000 missional communities planted by planters of mission. That's a movement of Jesus. That is the church unleashed. This last one really freaked out a lot of you. 5 locations helping 5% of the 10 find and follow Christ. Well, when? I don't know. How? Don't know either. That's what I'm dreaming about. I just believe that's a movement of Jesus. When some of my friends or staff members, when we start to see some early signs of a movement of Jesus, we have an emoji that we text one another. And it's the wave emoji. Here's an example. This was to Tommy. Bro. It's like I use that in I'm working on it. I use it in every text, bro. It's happening, and then multiple wave emojis. It'd be fun if we just start, all get in on the wave. Like, whenever we're seeing anything that looks like, feels like, sounds like, smells like, oh my goodness, I think Jesus is on the move. Oh my goodness, I think this is a movement of Jesus. Wave emoji. Well, why don't I use a hill emoji? Because there's hill emojis. Why do we use a wave emoji? Very important. A movement of Jesus is more like surfing than climbing. That's why. It's more like surfing than climbing. A movement of Jesus is a raging wave of redemption. A movement of Jesus is a colossal wave of compassion. A movement of Jesus is a tidal wave of city transformation. My question to you is, do you want to yearn for and pray for and long for that kind of wave? The kind of wave that's a wave of redemption. The kind of wave that's a wave of compassion where people think differently about the church. The kind of wave that is the wave of city transformation where churches are unified versus feeling in competition of one another. Do you want that kind of wave? Do we long for that kind of wave? If you do, then don't miss this. Most important thing I'm going to say. We don't produce the wave. We prepare for the wave. We don't produce the wave. We prepare for the wave. How? In a million different ways. We prepare in prayer. This is why the boiler room has to be filled up. And it's not yet, but it's getting a little better. Next hour, check your kids back in and pray for the whole service. If you don't have kids, no excuse. Pray for the whole service. Stay here all week. You can start paying rent. Just live in the boiler room. But guys, do we want this? We're going to turn around and be 90 years old. Now is the time. And I'm not the only leader of a church like this that feels this. The storm spotters are seeing it all around the American church. We're saying something's shifting. And we can't be asleep at the wheel. Prepare in partnership. We prepare in missional communities out there, but we also prepare in here. We're not casual about being here with God's people. You don't have to be here, but be at some gospel-centered church. We prepare through courses like Alpha, Partner and Planter course. We prepare we prepare. I don't want you to be the surfer out there thinking as though you're the one that's going to create the wave. That will only create exhaustion. And equally so, I don't want you to be the surfer that chooses to stand on the shoreline and misses the wave of a lifetime. I want you to join me. I want you to jump in. I want you to start paddling. I think that's what this looks like. I want us to position ourselves as the people of God to be ready for what we believe is a wave that's coming. I believe it. I want to congratulate 500 on the nose. 550 of you have registered to take a course. This is a miracle. It's a miracle. Miracle, 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 miracle. Hence the wave emojis. There's been wave emojis all over the place the past 24 hours. 550 people in this church are on either the Alpha course, Partner course, or Planter course. We've never seen anything like this. Well, what is that? John, your preaching is better. No, it's not. Tommy's worship, he hadn't even led worship in like 2 years, it feels like. What's he been doing with all his time? What is it? It's a wave. It's starting to happen. And you're positioning. You're not on the shoreline. We're paddling as a church, as the people of God, getting ready, getting trained up, getting prepared. We're saying right now, take a course, try a team. You can do that in the app. I don't think you can still sign up for a course, but you can give my name. It's kind of like a pastor's note. Maybe they'll let you in. Get on a team, take a tour. We need 2,500 volunteers. We do. 5 locations are coming. We got to get ready. We need to fill the boiler room. So here's how we're gonna end. We introduced this song last week. The song moves me. It's a song of excitement. It's a song of like intercession, kind of yearning for God to open the heavens. When the heavens are opened in an unprecedented way, that's what causes the wave. And so we're gonna finish today by singing this song. And I want you to stand to your feet. I want you to get ready to sing this. And I want you to sing this. I want you to sing this from your heart. I want you to sing this as you are preparing heart and soul for a movement of Jesus, heart and soul for an unprecedented wave. These words, darkness trembles, mountains shake, what was dead now comes awake. Like, do you want that? Yeah. Do you want that? What, Judd, you got to get over here. I got to move this. You get in the center because you're going to sing it. Well, I might sing it. Darkness trembles, mountains shake, what was dead now comes awake. Mission Church, does that move your heart? And it says, every captive breaking free. Then this part, right now. Right now. Right, and when we get to that part, I just want you, some of you don't believe it, so you're gonna watch us that do believe it sing it. I just want us with this heart of intercession and prayer, sing these words.